Well, hello. Here in Le Mans, we are just getting ready for the final Junior Dressage Championship. It is going to be the individual freestyle to music here this morning. And we have 19 competitors. Based on the program, we were to have 18, but in fact, as if you were watching it, you would have seen in the individual medal decider, we had those two on equal 18th, Hennis and Miles Graham. And it will be those two who lead us away. The draw for these freestyles done in groups of 5. So we have a group of 4, those placed between 16th and 18th. And then we go on into our 3 groups of 5 for the top 15, working all the way towards the individual test medalists from yesterday. But also very, very interesting to see the shuffling of the deck across the team test results and on then into the individual test over Friday and Saturday here in Le Mans. But with Nessa Stables, Allegro, Van Het, Triekelhoff and Hennis is going to be our first freestyle ride today in the Junior Championships. Amber choosing to show the canter at the beginning of her freestyle program. As I say, one of those pair in equal 18th in the individual test. Amber 14th in the team test on 69. It was 68 in the individual test. In the walk program for the freestyle, they need to show minimum of 20 meters of collected, minimum of 20 meters of extended walk, and they actually only have to show 1 half pirouette. They can choose whether it is to the right or to the left, but as is common with all freestyles as well, if you choose to repeat a movement, you will be marked for it technically once again, and then it will be averaged. Team bronze medalist with this horse, the Children on Horses, a couple of years ago in the Jasfala in Hungary. '71% in the junior freestyle in Aachen during the Chio back at the beginning of July. Fantastic preparation, very, very lucky those junior riders who got to ride in that environment and during that particular week. Not only for their own experience, but also for the caliber of dressage they then got to be able to watch. And no surprise to see, I think we'll see quite a lot of the juniors and using some of the movements from the other tests, like that circle into shoulder in. Lovely reaction from Amber there, as she is the first to complete the freestyle here in Le Mans for the final set of junior medals in the under-18 FEI Dressage European Championships for junior riders, running alongside the children on horses and the pony games, the pony show jumping, eventing and dressage championships all coming together here at Le Mans this weekend as well. Our judges have given their technical marks as they saw the test being ridden. 16 technical areas that our juniors must deliver against, and then our judges go on to give their artistic scores. And the artistic scores are broken down into 5 areas: rhythm, energy, elasticity, harmony between the rider and the horse, choreography, including the use of the arena and inventiveness, a degree of difficulty and calculated risks, and then the music and the interpretation of the music. So that making up 50% of the overall score for each contender. I'd say it really is going to be interesting, especially when we get to the pointy end, because there was such a shuffling of the deck in the results between the team and the individual test. I mean, our individual medalist, Sophie Schmitz-Heinen, was actually 5th in the team test. Her teammate Maria Theresa Paul, Team Gold, actually won the individual ranking of the team test. Bronze stayed the same. Dominique Van Dalsen, Sophie Van Rooij stayed 4th. But up into the top 5, Victoria von Braunmühl and DSP First Class, who was 7th in the team test. And that potentially is because they had gone so early. They were the very first in the arena. So 70.075 for our first to go, setting the standard here, and actually immediately setting us up for a little bit of match play, because of course we are going to be going on in a moment to the competitor who is exactly equal with Amber Hennis in the qualifying test, in equal 18th, Miles Graham and Nibley Black Pearl for Great Britain joining us now.
En M, 71,050, en V, 71,375, une technique de 67,550, artistique de 72,600, et global de 70,075. Et bien, le maintenant, la Grande-Bretagne, representing the Britain, my grand riding 9 Black Pearl.
Miles Graham and Nibley Black Pearl, as you can see, has posted a freestyle of 77%. And actually, a score like that today would suddenly rocket them up the order just based on some of the predictions we've looked at. Miles and Nibley Black Pearl, 24th in the team test, came up into a qualification spot with 18th in the individual test, 68% in both. But it's today the day that it all locks in for this pair. I think it speaks a lot to the quality of the championships we've enjoyed over the week, that 68% from Miles, you know, was, gosh, very nearly out of the top 25 in the team test. Did, of course, come into play for the team medal, the bronze for Great Britain, but also then, you know, 68% just getting the qualification. I mean, the number of people scoring in excess of 70% at these tests and at these levels. And as we were talking over the course, just having a little bit of miscommunication here, unfortunately, but as we were talking over the course of the two team days, how very, very few made Grand Prix horses there are involved in the juniors. Most of these horses have been their whole international career with these junior riders. A lot of very young horses in the championships. Overall, just presenting a really, really nice picture here. So that a couple of miscommunications and errors that have come as a result of those are probably going to be expensive today. You know, a little bit like we were talking about with our top 5 rider as well, Victoria van Braunmühl, DSP First Class. There's certainly a tendency to feel disadvantaged going quite early, where the judges haven't maybe just quite got in sync and got a feel for the range of marks they're going to end up using today, the range of skills, the range of performances they're going to see. So as you mentioned, they do only have to ride 1/2 pirouette at the walk. Quite often in these tests you would see maybe the collected walk, then a 1/2 pirouette in one direction, the horse's stronger direction, back an extended walk the other direction, and that ticks the boxes for the walk movements required. So not quite the reaction, unfortunately, that we saw from Amber Hennis. Miles a little bit rueful there, knowing that he could have done more, and whether he's going to be able to rocket up the eventual leaderboard of this freestyle as his form coming into the championships might have suggested. But again, you know, with a horse that has not got a huge international record, you know, you're basing that off very, very few runs in the freestyle, and in very, very different paradigms as well to a major championships. Not just the pressure of this arena, the electricity of this arena here in Le Mans, but also the fact that it's a very, very busy day at the championships. There are, you know, the show jumping championships individual final, the eventing show jumping will be going on throughout the day today in nearby arenas, and 2 other championships of dressage as well, with the ponies and the children on horses also concluding here. So our judges, Alban Tissot of France, who is the president of the jury for the juniors, is of course our judge at C for this individual final. Suzanne Barup, who is the judge at C for the team test, is today at H. At M is Sven Gunther Rottenberger of the Netherlands. Alice Schwab of Austria is our judge at B, and judging at E is German judge Knut Dansberg. Overall, 69.685, so unfortunately not the freestyle they wanted at all, and in terms of the ranking between those two who are in equal 18th, the nod goes to Amber Hennis. She is the individual leader at the moment with just over 70%. Still very close between them, but you could see there that, you know, Miles Graham's horse, I mean, Amber Hennis' horse lovely as well, but Miles Graham's horse, you know, lovely, big, powerful horse. We saw that a little bit in the extended canter, the extended trot, that it is there. There is a very, very strong looking performance. There's a lot of quality work, but unfortunately just when both the technical and the artistic broke down a couple of times, there's not a lot for the judges to do. But quite pleasing for Miles to have made it into the individual final, and Great Britain as medalists would expect, but not guaranteed, that they would have ended up with the maximum of 3 riders in, and ending up doing so. Okay, Germany, Netherlands, Great Britain all with 3, Denmark, Belgium, Sweden, the next best teams all with 2, Italy, Austria, the Czech Republic and Poland then also all qualifying a rider. And on the subject of Poland, here is their rider for these championships. It was a tough go for the Poles in the team. They had only got 3 riders, and unfortunately their first rider was eliminated in the team test, meaning that they didn't really participate. But again, heartening to see 13 nations with teams coming forward in the juniors here in Le Mans, in the juniors alone. Of course, there's so many athletes here across so many nations in all of the divisions: ponies, children on horses and juniors in the dressage, as well as the pony, eventing and jumping championships. Veronica Pawluk, Fallet. Veronica had a very, very good team test of 68.9, and that ended up comfortably within the top 20, and then scoring 68 once again in the individual test to secure her individual place in this freestyle final. The half passes, as they were in the team test, the half passes in trot have a doubling coefficient. And it's interesting to see that Veronica comes out of a left circle and into right half pass, whereas of course what the test was setting them up for was always left circle to left half pass and vice versa. And again, going back to the artistic score, it's quite an original move, one we're not going to see too much, to have almost from a downward transition into walk, almost straight away the walk pirouette. Interesting to maybe see the music mark if we're wanting to get into the nerdiness of it all, because overall the music rather comes and goes rather than being there consistently to support the exercises. Again, nice evolution of movements there from the half pass, straightening on the centre line and showing the flying change, and nicely mirrored from just moments ago. Again, whilst the half pirouette didn't come off brilliantly, again, I really like the inventiveness of this serpentine canter, coming down into walk, returning on the half pirouette, picking up the canter again. There's a lot going on. It's a very, very busy line for the rider, but actually it's quite attractive, and I think keep the judges engaged and interested. So a few extra bars of the music there as well, just after she finished. Quite a sudden halt at the end, but Victoria there probably then, and maybe a little bit more obviously in the bowl, that she'd just fallen out of some sync with her music, and difficult again with the music sort of coming and going in that fashion to know maybe for how long that had been going on. But as I say, the judges probably very, very keen and conscious of it when it comes to making their artistic scores. But a nice test, and as I say, a lot of interesting and inventive lines in there that, when if they were to have come together very, very well, result in high artistic score, high technical deliverables, high degree of difficulty as well. They could be looking at a very, very positive score there. A combination that have impressed throughout the championships.
quelques minutes donc avant de se retrouver sur ce rectangle international. Il sera présidé en 6e par Madame Sophie Schmitz-Heinen pour la France. Le jugeant H, le Estonie, Eva Maria Vasaryova. Le jugeant E chez les Pays-Bas avec Dominique Van Dalsen. Jugeant E pour la Pologne, Matteo Borgazzi. Jugeant B pour l'Allemagne, Clara Cordes-Anker. Just 5 minutes before the first rider to go on the arena for the children individual competition 2025.
Voici le résultat de Veronica Pawluk qui prend la tête avec notamment E71 550 en H72 avec 172 375 lancés, en M72 900, en B73 350, moyenne technique de 69 950, artistique de 74 260, moyenne globale de 72 455. For British rider Veronica Pawluk at E71.55, at H72.1. At C72.305, at M72.9, at B73.35. The technical average of 69.95, artistical 74.96, an average of 72.455. The first race so far. Première place donc pour l'instant pour la cavalière polonaise Veronica Pawluk, associée à Faculté. Et nous avons le plaisir maintenant d'accueillir la Suède.
That score there for our Polish rider. 72.455, so that's comfortably in the lead at the moment. So the last of this little group, those placed between 16th and 18th in the qualifying test, is going to be the first of the riders we see for Sweden in this individual freestyle final. So with the Swedish bred Dartulet VH, Juni Skobe Rosen. '11th in the team test, falling back a little bit to 16th in the qualifier. They did score just over 70% in the team test, but it was 68% in the individual test run here in Le Mans over the last 2 days. So Juni's horse for the Children on Horses in 2022, last year's juniors at Centaur as well, qualified for the freestyle 12 months ago at the championships, ended up top 10 at Centaur, scoring 73.5 in the freestyle at last year's championships. Again, it's been quite interesting just watching even just these first few freestyles, the various different approaches that the riders have had. Some with the walk very early, some straight into the canter out of the first halt.
Juni Skobe Rosen,
So again, looking like a nice freestyle, a nice smile anyway from Juni Skobe to finish off their week of sport here. But is it going to be enough to propel them back into the sort of place they found themselves in 12 months ago at the championship, sitting top 10 with their freestyle score? That was on a 73% last year. The 10th place was taken on 72.8. We've already seen a 72.4 from our Polish rider, and the winner last year, the individual gold medalist, was on a 77.9.
Les noms depuis Pénardi en termine ici avec son exercice en individuel associé à Ciel de Malray.
So 70.4 for Juni Skobe Rosen here in 2025 at the championships. You see 67.8 the technical average, and then together with the artistic average, translating out to that 70.4 overall score. And we will go now into our top 15 for the freestyle, with our current leader being Veronica Pawluk and Falette Old with a 72.4, a score that last year probably would have been almost assured to rise about 5 places and end up inside the top 10. Whether that will be the dynamic this year or not, we shall see.
The technical 67.8, artistical 73, the range of 70.4, second place so far. Deuxième place donc pour Juni Skobe Rosen et Martina Liège. Deuxième place donc derrière Veronica Pawluk, qui est bien venue maintenant à l'Autriche. Voici Lena Abfalterer qui nous rejoint. Associée à Clara Cordes-Anker.
So going into that top 15, we're actually going to go near the top of the next group. 12th in the qualifying test was Lena Abfalterer and La Bella Rosa. Lena, I think, would have been a little bit disappointed with her team test being 25th in that test, but coming right back then to 12th in the qualifying test and securing this place for herself and for Austria in the individual freestyle final. Just saw coming out of that turn that it was just a tiny bit hurried. I think as a judge you would have felt, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next, and then the transition to go back to the right was just that little bit sudden. The major thing here, I mean, that will come into the artistic marks because it's about the whole look of the thing, but you cannot win at freestyle without a very, very, very strong technical underpinning. You can have the most flamboyant, flashiest, most difficult floor plan, but you aren't actually executing the movements. A really, really nice support to the canter work there as well from the music she's chosen. She's obviously bang on her music as well. She's taking a spook there, unfortunately, as she just went to reach for that transition. Obviously very confident in the changes, riding multiple changes down that serpentine. So for the juniors, you know, they have that technical restriction, of course, at the upper end of their freestyle. You know, freestyles inevitably, especially if you think to para-equestrian sport, you know, riders will bring in movements of a higher level, a higher degree of difficulty, but there are quite often just, you know, lines in the sand that say these are prohibited movements, and one of them for our juniors is kind of sequence changes. They cannot ride a flying change one after the other closer than 5 strides apart. What a mixed week it's been for Lena Abfalterer, because, you know, so far off the pace in a way in the team test, to come right back into the mix, 12th as an individual in yesterday's test, and today I think just that big error is going to make it difficult for them to really feature as strongly as they might have hoped on the final day of the juniors.
Allez, on va découvrir dans quelques instants le résultat de Lena Abfalterer. Pour l'instant, c'est Abigail Gray qui a acquis l'avantage en 72 455, parce qu'on a pu passer les 69%. On va le voir dans quelques instants dans ce coup de coup.
Remember, our Polish rider Veronica Pawluk with the leading score at the moment, 72.455, and it feels like that is going to remain very, very competitive.
Lena Vasaryova vient de s'exprimer ici sur le rectangle à l'occasion de cette épreuve en individuel avec Friday 1-9 pour l'édition 2025 des championnats d'Europe. C'était la République tchèque. Voici à présent les notes de la cavalière.
So score through 71.860, not terribly far behind, but it is behind. So Veronica Pawluk now is guaranteed to have moved out of her group. She will finish top 15 for sure. And Lena Abfalterer, on paper, one of the best we should be seeing from this next group of 5 coming very, very early. So it might mean that there's more ground yet to be made for Veronica Pawluk and Fale.
Juge Hennis 70 750, juge Herweyers 73 200, ça nous fait une moyenne technique 69 400, pour l'artistique 74 320, ce qui fait une moyenne de 71 860, et donc la deuxième place pour l'instant pour la cavalière autrichienne Lena Abfalterer, la Bella. Allez, puis on vient maintenant pour la République tchèque, Johana Vasaryova. Elle nous rejoint avec Braunmühl.
So Czech rider Johana Vasaryova, 14th in the individual qualifying test joining us now here in the Piste at Le Mans. Third junior championships in a row and third time appearing in the freestyle final. Johana Vasaryova and Bonadere for the Czech Republic. And coming nicely back up into the qualifying zone, 14th in the individual test from which they qualify, having been outside the top 20 in the team test. Again, like we were saying, choosing to just put a little bit more of the walk work up front, Johana Vasaryova. Trying to showcase, especially at the very early part of the test, something you know your horse is, 99 times out of 100 going to show at its absolute best. Lost a little bit of quality towards the last few strides of the half pass, which is unfortunate because the half passes, as they were in the team test, have the doubling coefficient. The other technical exercises in the freestyle that have the doubling coefficient are the canter flying changes. Very, very nice extension in the trot across the diagonal. That circle just looked perhaps, for taste, a little bit hurried. It looked like they could have just wound the temperature back a little bit. Ticking off the movements, the shoulder in, right and left, they need to show a minimum of 12 meters as well for it to be classed as a fully executed technical movement. If you're showing it again, you don't have to show the full thing, but of course then you're not going to impact your technical score for that movement. So if it's just a means of getting from place to place, you can show a fraction of the movement, not the full amount dictated by the floor plan. But you must show every prescribed movement at least once. So Johana Vasaryova and Bonadea. Could that have gone in front of 72.455? You know, it looked like a clear round. It looked relatively error-free. It's going to come into, again, that technical execution, which for this pair we have seen, you know, 68s and 69s across the 2 days of competition so far. And then, you know, the artistic polish, how the judges feel that was all put together. Scored a 71.6 at Hagen this year in the freestyle, which Hagen was a real landmark this summer for many of the teams, confirming their selection here for Le Mans. So 72.455, Veronica Pawluk and Fallet are still the ones to beat here in Le Mans in the freestyle, but of course we're going up through the rankings. We're in these groups of 5. We're currently in the group of 5 who placed between 11th and 15th in the qualifying competition. Have that score coming through, 71.555 for Johana and Bonadea. So that in fact is going to go into 3rd place at the moment. Veronica Pawluk and Fallet, Lena Abfalterer, Johana Vasaryova are our top 3 at the moment, 72.455 being the leading score. As I mentioned earlier on, Great Britain qualifying 3 for the individual freestyle final. Abigail Gray was 10th in the team test, 11th in the individual test. 2 very, very consistent days. And of course, a team bronze medalist with us here over the team test as well. Did crack 70% in that team test. So Abigail Gray, Empire B. Abigail and Empire, first season together internationally this year. Have ridden the freestyle twice. They rode it at Addington and also to a 72% at Aachen in July. So this is the second competitor who's, we see this morning, who's lucky enough to be in those juniors at Aachen. Yeah, it's a really big trot. The whole horse's frame is very, very uphill as well. Overall, they should be getting good technical marks. And that work there through the shoulder in, turning back on themselves and out of the half circle, then into the half pass. Remembering the half passes are doubled in this test. Quite confident of her half passes as well. She rides a floor plan that includes moving laterally both directions there, from top to bottom of the ring. See Abigail just having to work a little bit there on the horse's energy, just falling back on her a little bit in those half passes. Abigail just trying to keep Empire B up to the mark. So nicely shows that she has the horse in balance by maintaining the counter-canter around to that downward transition. And yeah, walk pirouette, plonk there in the middle of canter. Again, that's something we haven't seen too frequently in the floor plans here. And again, you don't have to show the walk pirouette in both directions. You only need to show one in the whole test, if that's your choice. Actually, I wouldn't say we saw too many 7.5s and 8s for walk pirouettes over the course of the last 4 days of sport, so I could say most riders are looking to minimise them. A little bit sudden on that downward transition. And again we get the same evolution downwards out of canter, but picking up the trot this time. So Abigail Gray, Empire B. Again, you know, comparing and contrasting, we're talking about, you know, some riders who, you know, this is their third year at championships alone with their horse. For Abigail, it is her first year internationally with this horse. Her freestyle scores in particular have been on an upward trend. Does that continue today? 72.3 from Aachen and a 72.3 or slightly better would be right there alongside the current leading score Abigail would like to do. Having been 11th, remember, in the individual qualifying test, so pretty much right the way on till the break. On paper, on prediction, Abigail would be the test to beat. Whether that actually is the case is, of course, the reason why we watch live sport. So 3 more to see before that break. 2 from Abigail's group, and then we'll take 1 from the group placed between 6th and 10th before we have the judges' break. And Abigail does it. She goes into the lead, 72.590. It is a new best for her in freestyle and overtakes Veronica Pawluk and Fallette for the individual lead at the moment. We'll see whether she can hold her own or against the rest of her group over the course of the next couple of tests here now in Le Mans.
So far, Abigail Gray is entirely qui prend la pole position avec une moyenne de 72,590 avec une moyenne artistique de 70,300 et 2 moyennes artistiques de 74,180 et technique de 70,300. Alors que nous accueillons maintenant la Suède. Nous retrouvons la Suède. Maintenant,
So Philippa, Lyra and Roswell, second of the riders we're going to see for Sweden this morning. Philippa 28th in the team test, but coming right up to 14th in the individual test to qualify herself through here. That's a 69.1. This is a pair we've seen in freestyle just recently, scored 69% at Aachen. That was back in the December show at Aachen. This the second time in the Junior European Championships, and the first time in the freestyle final. Yeah, this test is off to a really lively start. I mean, it's underscored by, music is probably going to be quite familiar to our judges. It supports the horse very well. Going into the championships last year did score a 76% at Hagen in the freestyle. Showing a nice extended walk there. Just catching the music and that final bit of work up the centre line, Philippe Lyra and Roswell. Where is it going to land? Because, they promised a lot last year at Hagen, 73% going into the championships, then ended up not scoring well enough to qualify for the individual final. This is their first time coming to the final, but this year their scores have been much closer to 70% in their prelude runs. Does it come right today, or do we keep those two 72s, Abigail Gray and Veronica Pawluk, as our leading scores here in Le Mans, coming up to about halfway through the individual freestyle final of this FEI Dressage European Championships for juniors. See, our judges, we're so used to the Grand Prix level now, to the freestyle scores coming up so quickly, because the computer does a lot of the work, because the riders submit floor plans, so the judges can just score each movement as they give it, and the computer does all of the reckoning of averaging out for the technical scoring. But here, a little bit more old school, so it takes that little bit longer, and Philippe Lyra there with a 71.125. That will go into 5th place at the moment. The score's pretty close. 71.8 sits 3rd, 71.1 sits 5th, 71.5 is in there between, so it is not a big swing. And Philippe Lyra, if you look at the individual judges' scores, 4th with 4 of the judges, 6th with 1 of the judges, and translates to a score that ranks 5th overall in the championships so far.
sa prestation ici, la cavalière croate avec Daria Davinskaya. Nous étions Fitzcarraldo, 5e prestation à l'occasion de ce test en individuel, cette édition 2025 des championnats d'Europe Children. On date d'ici quelques instants maintenant pour savoir quel sera le résultat croate. C'était la seule représentante d'ailleurs de cette délégation à l'occasion de cette finale en individuel qui s'exécute à 18 coups.
Et voici maintenant le Danemark qui entre le glisse.
So next, penultimate before the break and the final one from this group of riders placed between 11th and 15th. 13th in the qualifying test. Clara Cordes-Anker and Brianna for Denmark.
Quality in 73.000 and the average score is 69%, 309. La cavalière croate donc termine avec une moyenne de 69%, 309. Distribué à 65%, 77 en tête technique et 73% en mode de qualité. Pour la tête de
Again, very, very strong form elsewhere with that 76% as a best score. Brianna and Clara during the course of our championships here, 26th in the team test, much further off the pace than I think they would have liked, but then coming up to 13th in the individual test to secure their position here. Scored a 73 in freestyle at Aachen this summer. Very nearly 76% when they were at the Europeans in Centaur 12 months ago. And that was a score that ended up being individual top 5. Very, very nice change there at the end. It's quite interesting watching the team test as well, that, you know, it was really taking a lot to get the judges up into 7.5 or an 8 for a flying change. The junior horses in the main were doing very, very good changes, but didn't just have quite the pizzazz, the wow, the punch that I think the judges are trained to look for the very, very highest marks. So Clara just, you know, maybe having analysed that a little bit, just riding with that little bit more oomph in some of the canter work, especially up to those changes today. And the changes, whilst they're not in the team test here in the freestyle, the flying changes have a doubled coefficient. So if you have a good change, and you've shown a lot, you can really make hay in this freestyle. Danes, of course, medalists last year in the team, just missing out on a medal this year. Clara, part of that team medal last year. Top 10 in every test, as you said, top 5 in the freestyle finale. It's been a rather different complexion to the championships this year. It would be lovely to see them re-find that form here on the final day. It would put a nice topping on the final day of the championships for Clara Cordes-Anker. Superhold might be a tiny bit wide behind if you were looking in as the judge at sea, but very, very square, very secure, very prompt as well out of the downward transition. The halts, of course, just as they are right the way up to Grand Prix, have their own mark out of 10. Which makes them very important. You know, there are only 16 prescribed movements. The halts at the beginning and the end with their mark out of 10 are one of those 16. So Clara Cordes-Anker and Brianna completing their test, and as I say, the target at the moment is a 72.590 for our leader for Britain, Abigail Gray, and Empire B.
Avec son nombre de notes, 72, 590 à battre.
There we go, 74.915 for Clara Cordes-Anker and Brianna. That is, by some margin, our best score to date. It is a very, very big score. Is it going to be enough? I mean, it's not far off moving them into top 10, even just as we talk at the moment. They are sitting in 11th place minimum as our leader at the moment.
For technical break, 71.55, artistical 78.28, and a wonderful 74.915. Denmark. Clara Cordes-Anker, a wonderful test for the Danish rider with Rikke. Et bien voilà, la boxe qui a pris l'avantage grâce à une merveilleuse avec en haut 74 en H, 74 925 en C, 74 625 en M, 73 900 en B, 76 250
cavalière talenteuse pour l'équipe d'Italie. The few seconds for the Italian rider Vittoria Tomasiewicz and Soullie.
Allez, voici maintenant pour le Danemark, c'est Rikke Maria Johansson qui nous rejoint avec Carpaccio.
Vittoria Tomasiewicz and Soullie, second
So last to go before the judging break is also for Denmark, 7th in the qualifying test. Rikke Maria Johansson and Braunmühl's Carpaccio. Rikke Maria, who has posted a 77% in freestyle, comes through to this final day of sport, having been 12th in the team test, 7th in the individual qualifier test. That saw our first set of individual medals presented yesterday. Rikke again just partnered with this horse internationally for this year in the run-up to the championships. At 77% junior freestyle coming at Lyra at Azelhof back in May. That was actually their last run before the championships, with a rather convincing win there at Lyra.
Deuxième chance française pour la compétition de côté Tigreuse. Nous sommes à présent avec Flavie Barrault et Cyr Rubineau. Couple qui se développe sur la scène internationale. Avec des places sur le Tigreuse canadien.
Just conveying this sense that I think a lot of the the very top Grand Prix freestyle riders have as well, of making it seem like you've got all the time in the world. Nothing is rushed, nothing is coming as a surprise or out of left field for horse or rider. It just looks very, very in balance, very calm, very collected, very assured. Yeah, it's nice. Very, very advanced exercise there. The half pass, flying change, and change of direction to the half pass, back to the right. And again, we said they can't do the flying changes closer than 5 strides apart, so they don't really become sequences. But Rikke Maria Johansson there, about as close as you can get between her 2 changes. And again, with the flying changes having that doubling coefficient, they're important to get right. They're also, from an artistic point of view, and degree of difficulty, to show those changes which are so important to the junior freestyle, between the half passes. In close sequence there, just the minimum of 5 strides apart, just elevates the difficulty of this floor plan a little bit beyond some of what we've seen so far. So Van Rooij's Carpaccio and Rikke Maria Johansson lay down the gauntlet here. They're the first we see from that group inside the top 10 in qualifying, and would hope that they've maybe done enough to overtake teammate Clara Cordes-Anker going into the break with Brianna. The target is the 74% here in Le Mans. .74.915, big score.
Et voici les résultats pour Rikke Maria Johansson. Allez, les résultats, je vais découvrir.
So Rikke Maria Johansson and Van Rooij's Carpaccio, 74.995. It is in the lead, but only just. Less than 1% there between Rikke Maria and Clara Cordes-Anker, teammate from the Danish team that finished 4th here in the championships 3 days ago. So the junior freestyle to music will take a short pause. The challenge for the medals will resume at 12:25, so actually not terribly long, just a shade under 10 minutes, and we will get back to it and see our final group of riders all the way up then to our eventual individual freestyle gold medalist here in Le Mans, the FEI Dressage European Championships for juniors.
The next rider is expected at 12:25. Le prochain concurrent est attendu à 12h25.
La raison, 82% pour la qualité, 68% 333 pour la technique, moyenne avec 4 points de plus, 75%, 167 pour la française Theresa Paul avec ses Rubino. Magnifique prestation ici de la compétition individuelle. Flavie Barou en 75, 167, elle signe tout simplement l'une de ses plus belles prestations de sa jeune carrière. 875.167 with the parler de nouvelle association, eh bien, on voit ici, là aussi, le résultat sur la scène internationale depuis mai 2025, la Belge Joachim Menance et les autres avec d'autres musiciens. Nouvelle association, et c'est tout ça qui médaille pour le live. Donc, ça, on trouve à la fin, c'est très soleil, sur les approches, Le salut de la Belgique, Léontine Hennis, est porté pour la Belgique.
So welcome back. As we went into the break, Rikke Maria Johansson and Bauer Højens Carpaccio for Denmark had just taken up the lead on 74.995. Teammate Clara Cordes-Anker and Brianna sat second on 74.915. Then was Abigail Gray and Empire, 72.59. Veronica Pawluk of Poland and Valette, 72.455 in fourth. And Lena Abfalterer and La Bella Rosa of Austria, 71.860 for fifth. But we're going up through the rankings based on the individual qualification class held over the last 2 days. We will be, we've just started into the group of riders placed between 6th and 10th. In fact, we had the rider who was placed 7th, Rikke Maria, who's now our leader. And we'll see whether our riders in that group from the Netherlands, Great Britain, Belgium and Italy coming after the break can move the needle on. Before we then go into our final 5, including those 3 members of the German gold medal winning team.
Nous reprenons la compétition du côté de cette problématique du championnat d'Europe junior. Et nous accueillons pour le Pays-Bas Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden qui rejoint Joni Skobe.
And it is the Netherlands that gets us back underway. Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden and Lorenzo Texel. 9th in the individual test. Having been 15th in the team test, scoring just over 70% in the individual qualifying class over the last 2 days here in Le Mans. So Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden, Lorenzo Texel, needing to replicate that best score really, 75.533. With the competition having already produced 2 74.9s for the top 2 spaces. So whilst there was that focus, particularly in the team test, on the 10-metre circle, the 10-metre half circle, they're not prescribed here. If the riders choose to ride them or other exercises, it sits solely in the artistic side. But, you know, collected trot overall has a mark. So there are some of the technical marks are for movements and some are for paces. Obviously, extended trot, extended walk, collected walk, you kind of would say that's a movement. But there is that mark for collected trot. We're going to see a lot of collected trot outside of shoulder ins and trot half passes. The walk is very, very purposeful. Just presents an attractive picture there from horse and rider just going away from our camera angle. And just dropping the head and neck contact a little bit, but the initial picture of the upper transition to trot was very, very uphill. Like the horse really filled out the box. Yeah, it's rather a replication, obviously in the other direction, of the line they rode for the second and third flying changes in the team test there. Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden, the flying changes and the trot half passes in the freestyle are the technical exercises that get their mark doubled by a coefficient. Again, very, very pleased with their morning's work here in Le Mans. Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden and Theresa Paul, you know, obviously being a little bit hypercritical, you say, you know, a point or two may be thrown away in that final halt. Easy to forget the importance of the halts at the beginning and the end of the test as part of the prescribed technical movements in freestyle at every level.
Il y a des véhicules qui donnent des avis sur les parkings du côté du parking camion. Mercedes Benz immatriculé HD 089 TN, ainsi une voiture belge immatriculée 2 GTZ 975 Volvo noir, et également une Skoda française immatriculée FD 484
Il y aura des résultats dans un instant.
de toute urgence sur le parking.
Pour Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden.
And the score for Sweden now for Esther Brandberg and Cardinal 67.778 for technical, for quality 83.500, and for the total score 75.639% spot place.
So Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden 74.770. My goodness, they're all very, very close. We've got the two Danish riders on 74.9, and now on 74.7 we have Brit and Theresa Paul, so holding third position.
En M, 74 350, NLP 73.125, en B 73,125, découvrons la moyenne technique. 71,700, la moyenne artistique 77,140, technical 71.7, artistical 77.84.
So the score's getting higher and higher. We've now got 3 on 74. Remember last year, the championship won on a 76. So bronze medalist from 3 days ago here with the British team, Isla Soullie and Vagabond de Massa. Isla and Vagabond, very, very consistent. 6th in the team test on 71%, 6th on 71% in the individual test as well. So certainly hoping for another top 10 result. Whether it is going to be frustratingly knocking on the door of the eventual top 5 all week long, or whether Isla now can ride a freestyle to put herself up into the eventual top 5. And of course then you are only a mark away from challenging for a medal. Did make the freestyle 2 years ago. Oh no. In Palebergen, they didn't make the freestyle last year at the championships. And unfortunately, you know, as much as anything, that first miscommunication off the center line, it just puts the judges on the back foot. It makes them kind of become a little hypercritical. They're looking for errors, they're looking for weaknesses, consciously or unconsciously. I mean, you can just imagine the natural reaction of a judge whose job is so subjective. As much training as we can give them, there's still, you know, there's the human instinct and reaction there. Best score of 78% coming at Addington a couple of years ago now. But certainly, you know, a floor plan, a way of presenting horse and rider that feels fairly locked into upper end of 70s. It's just whether they can fight back from that difficult start. Come alongside our leaders, maybe just get in front. On paper, you know, Isla should be the best of this group. We're working through the 5 riders placed between 6th and 10th. quite a quiet flying change there at the end of the line. Remember, they will repeat them probably multiple times because the flying changes have double coefficients. And, it's one thing we saw across pretty much all 61 of our athletes over the team test day is these single changes for these guys are very, very secure. But it was quiet, was the point I was making. And Rikke Maria Johansson, our current leader, was one who certainly went for it. The two Danish riders, in fact, rode probably more powerful and stronger and bigger changes than they had gone for in the team test today. As we said, we don't know whether that's as a result of analysing of the judges' tendencies from those 2 days, or whether they just feel that the freestyle is the time to take those slightly bigger risks. Sitting there with the minimum of 5-stride distance between those changes, but my goodness, change. And if they're getting good marks, they should all be 7s. You're going to get those doubled. And unfortunately, there's no covering up the fact that the music, Chris Cornell's You Know My Name from Casino Royale, as part of that medley of music across the Brosnan and Craig Bond eras, had run out before Isla Soullie and Vagabond de Massa had got to their final halt. So overall, there are problems there that Isla knows as well. It looked a good test for sure, but problems very, very clearly, sadly for them, at the beginning and the end. And unfortunately, we don't see the big smile that we've seen on several other athletes' faces here this morning for Isla and Vagabond de Massa as they leave the ring for the last time here at the championships. That's their third and final test of the juniors.
On vient d'aller faire un certain déplacer rapidement un geste de passage de tracteur pour accéder à la piste 2, et notamment pour le montage du podium. Merci de votre compréhension.
So the judges looking at those 16 prescribed movements, the 5 areas of artistic judging: rhythm, energy, elasticity, harmony between rider and horse, choreography, use of the arena, inventiveness, degree of difficulty and calculated risks, and music and interpretation of the music. And of course, missing out the music finishing a few strides before they did is going to significantly impact that. It'd be interesting. The judges will also be very much more conscious of whether they felt that the music, the leitmotif had changed before the exercises had earlier on in the program as well, or whether it was just a late fall behind the music. I think in degree of difficulty and calculated risks it should be up there. I mean, it's the first we've really seen use that restriction of 5 strides to their advantage in a way, by showing us that long center line of almost sequence changes. 74.045 into 4th at the moment with that competitive score. It is our 4th scoring just in excess of 74%. So still less than 1% covering the entire top 4 at the moment. But from Isla Soulie's point of view, with Vagabond de Massa, the chances of leading this group and maybe knocking on the door of the individual podium have unfortunately slipped through their grasp. Rikke Maria Johansson remains our leader, 74.995, the rider who was just behind Isla on the qualification. So again, 2 more to see from this group. And if either of them were to go in front of Rikke Maria, that would be an improvement. They would be stepping up. But at the moment, Rikke Maria is on course to maybe finish minimum 6th in this championship.
Eh bien, arrive maintenant à la cage au podium. Herweyers, une belle vista, number 207.
Herweyers and Belle Vista have got themselves into a great position here, 8th in the qualifying class, up from 23rd in the team. But as you saw there, also their best score in freestyle is a 70%, so they are under a little bit of pressure to try and stay with the group they found themselves amongst here on the final day of the juniors. Belgium, of course, top 5 in the team competition here at Le Mans. Belle Vista and Emily, it is their first season together, only 2 freestyles before. Of course, the other thing you don't know without absolutely tracking the sport is whether, you know, as they have gained experience and confidence together, whether Emily and her coach have looked to add more elements to the freestyle. So it's not just maybe that the score is trending upwards as they become more secure as a combination, but also they are planning to and executing and delivering on a more difficult freestyle floor plan. And again, you can see where, you know, the various levels of that, you know, complication of the floor plan come in. You know, after that long extended canter, you know, maybe a more difficult floor plan would be to bring in the collection then and ride a flying change at the end of the line. Whereas Emily just riding the long extended canter up the ring shows a very, very nice extended canter, but doesn't necessarily increase her degree of difficulty. She doesn't show the ability to really counterpoint one difficult movement, one well-executed movement against another. Emily Herweyers, Belvista, completing their test with us here, as I say, comfortably inside the top 10 in the individual test, and that was coming back into their own because they'd been outside the top 20 in the individual test. Notwithstanding, it was on a 68%. In that team test, 67, 68, 69, they're all stacked up so very closely, like it would have just been a couple of decimal points of percentages one way or another that could have been the difference between about 15th in that test and outside the top 20. So Emily, not sure is going to give us our first 75 and go into the lead, but is she going to get over 70% and maybe score a new personal best? And Emily Herweyers, Belvista, really good new personal best, 72.060. So for them, they're very much on an upward trend, as I say. I don't know whether that's because they're including and making the floor plan a little bit more difficult each time as well as they consolidate. But 72 today, whilst it is not going to challenge those immediate top four, it is a PB for Belvista and Emily Herweyers, and it really does go on to reinforce the change of form they found between the team and the individual here at these championships in Le Mans. So Emily in 7th position on that 72.060. 4 riders on 74, the next 3 riders all on 72. Matteo Borgazzi is the sole rider flying the flag for the Italians here in the individual final. Matteo with Incognito. 17th in the team test for Italy, helping contribute to their 7th place overall result in the teams, and then top 10 in the individual for Incognito and Matteo on 69.8. Again, as we saw, that personal best of 70% in freestyle, that is off the back of just 2 starts in freestyle, one last year at Palebergen and one this spring in Slovakia at Noticish. So having scored so close to 70% and then taking an individual top 10 in yesterday's test, Matteo, well, he'll be pumped. He'll have a real desire to come in here and try and crack that 70%, be as competitive as possible. And a little bit as well, there's nothing to leave on the table anymore. You're not coming back into this ring anymore. You've no more tests to ride this week. If there's ever a moment to take a risk and try and see whether you can reach for that bigger score, this is the day, this is the class. Say using those walk pirouettes, you only have to ride one, as we've been mentioning, but using those walk pirouettes is a little bit of a counterpoint to show the transition downwards, walk pirouette, and also get a very useful change of direction from the point of view of the choreography. Matteo Borgazzi and Incognito, as I say, opening the throttles, it feels like that, and just having a real crack at this competition on the final day. Without a doubt, Matteo would be super disappointed if he ended up outside the top 10 when it comes to it. As Matteo and Incognito actually complete the group of riders placed between 6th and 10th. Rikke Maria Johansson on 74.995, I think set to remain our leader, just standing by for the score for Incognito. 5 more to go, and 5 more from whom we expect to find our 3 medalists. And Matteo scores 70.430, which will go 11th on our ranking at the moment, and unfortunately that almost assures that he will not stay top 10 in the final analysis. I say, from Matteo's point of view, that at least is a new personal best. That is something to take away, but I say I still take my hat off to Matteo for at least coming in and really, really trying. You could see him riding for the lines, riding for the movements, riding for the marks. But what the two Danish riders who are holding the 1-2 at the moment have done, and done very successfully, is really not just ride with positivity and energy, but they'd upped their game. They really had moved their dressage riding into another gear. They might actually have been kicking themselves for being a little bit too conservative on team test day, and thus losing out on the opportunity for Denmark to retain a team medal won 12 months ago and finish fourth behind Great Britain. And today, certainly those two Danish riders came in and were really, really positive. So 6th and 7th guaranteed for Denmark as a minimum. We go into our top 5. They're drawn in a random order as well. So those placed between 1st and 5th put into a draw and drawn out in order. And we're actually going to start with a medalist, Theresa Paul. Our gold medalist from the individual, Sophie Schmitz-Heinen, comes next. Then it is 4th and 5th. And then last to go will be our bronze medalist from the individual, Dominique Van Dalsen. Don't forget, the individual ranking winner of the team last year, the individual gold from the individual, ended up off the podium entirely in the freestyle 12 months ago at the juniors. So I say the draw sets this up to be quite dynamic and maybe topsy-turvy, but nothing is assured, and certainly not until that individual medalist Dominique Van Dalsen and Just Johnson complete the program here in a few minutes' time. So Maria Theresa Paul and Diaton and Maria Theresa. Winners of the team test as individuals, and silver in the individual. 73 in the team test, 72.5 in the individual test, and a 76.250 best score. And a few riders from amongst this top group are going to have to produce best scores. Look at this, straight into trot half pass and straight into, sorry, that's going to be shoulder in, my apologies. But just kind of highlighting, they hope to the judges that lateral work is going to be positive for this pair. And we do get that early half pass, as I was going to go on to say. The half passes have the doubling coefficient, so they're important. I expect we're going to see a lot of them. We're going to see flying changes and half passes at trot from these who are challenging for the medals to try and maximize their double score. It's an interesting artistic choice to come straight out of the halt into the shoulder in, rather than just letting the judges assess the overall horse and rider picture in a more natural frame. But one of the things you're up against is a time limit. And if you have a lot of exercises planned, you want to show off so much, you don't really have time to waste. Has to come in between 4.5 and 5 minutes. Good activity in the walk. You can see the horse really working through the back. Overall, the head and neck contact is probably the negative on that extended walk. no surprise to see an overall very, very high quality of technical work here. Just there are times where the horse, it comes back in a little bit behind the vertical, and I just wonder whether, you know, after 3 days of competition, Diaton is just a little bit like, you know, oh yeah, I know exactly what we're doing here. And he's just not listening and giving as much rideability as I think we've enjoyed seeing in the previous few days. The judges will have to balance all that out, but as we say, you know, there's very, very strong technical execution here. Nice transition, and the horse has come nicely up into this trot as well. And well prepared for that final halt, and it comes off well for her as well. Theresa Paul and Diaton FRH. Have we seen the first of our medalists? Diaton winning the individual ranking of the team test, silver in the individual test, and now hoping to take a freestyle medal as well. We go into this group with a bang, but we have the best of the day from the individual to come next as well. So we might see 2 places on the podium locked up very, very quickly. Certainly those 2 German riders hope that that is the case. Kept in suspense. $74,995 leads for Rikke Maria Johansson, and the score coming through now from Theresa Paul and Diaton, and that is not what we expected to see. 73,465. It is overtaken by all of those 74% scores. Going into 5th, Soullie is in front, Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden is in front, Clara Cordes-Anker for Denmark is in front, and Rikke Maria Johansson and Braunmühl Carpaccio are now guaranteed top 5. Last year, as we said, it was a German domination by one rider in the team and the individual, and then ended up off the podium in the freestyle. We see that once again. Theresa Paul and Diaton cannot come back from there to a medal. They sit 5th at the moment. And Rikke Maria 7th in the individual qualifying test. Now is very, very close to an individual medal at these championships. Sits top 5 guaranteed. So there was a little bit of a change in the order for this German rider as well. 5th in the individual ranking of the team test, contributing to the team score for gold for Germany, and then winning the gold yesterday in the individual test. Sophie Schmitz-Heinen and Attractive, scoring 72.9 for gold in the individual test. made their international debut together in June. Gold medalists here already at these championships in the individual test, the technical test. Now, what can they deliver in the freestyle? As I say, the freestyle score, the best of 73.9 that we've seen, wouldn't be bad. It would go into 5th, but it doesn't tell us a lot. They've only had the one previous freestyle. One thing you'd hope that if it's error-free, you're talking about the best technical execution, or one of the best technical executions we have at the championship here for Julie Sophie Schmitz-Heinen and Attractive. But we were telling the same story just moments ago with Maria Theresa Paul and Diaton as well. Big ground grab encounter there. We're becoming a bit more familiar with this now. I mean, we expected to see the walk pirouette, as it is required, used as a little bit of a counterpoint. Say half pass left and right require technical movements in the canter work. In the trot work, the half pass left and right have that doubling coefficient. The canter doubles come in the flying changes, and the flying change are two of the movements. Right change and left change are given their own separate mark out of 10. So more often than not, I think those who really want to be competitive will tend to show the walk pirouette on both reins. But earlier on, we were certainly seeing the odd test that only had one, where they knew they had to do it, they would choose their best way, because we didn't see massive scores for anybody's walk pirouettes in the earlier tests as well. Sophie Schmitz-Heinen and Attractive. What is it going to be for them? It has already been crushing disappointment, I'm afraid, for Theresa Paul and Diaton, who had finished first and second in tests, including taking a silver medal as a result of their performance yesterday. But now, with the score they've posted in the freestyle, immediately out of the medals. For Sophie Schmitz-Heinen, it's a little bit blind for us. 73.9 has been their best score, but it has been their only score in freestyle. And today, were they to replicate that score, it would not be enough. It wouldn't be enough to make the podium. They would also go into 5th place, I think, on a 73.9. So a jury of 5 under Alban Tissot, president for the juniors this week, and therefore our judge at C for the freestyle finale. Just finalizing their scores. And as you see already, the scores can make very definitive medal decisions, in that we can rule people out of a chance of a medal. Sophie Schmitz-Heinen and Attractive, the whole German team waiting. They have one more rider as well, Victoria von Braunmühl and DSP First Class to come. She's done it, 77.530. As I say, it was so difficult with only the one freestyle score to predict what way it might went. We knew they would be very strong technically. It looked a good artistic test, as you see. Every score there on the artistic side over 80%, and that now is what leads, 77.530. That is comparable to the gold medal score of 12 months ago as well. So we'll see how it all plays out here. But now, Sophie Van Rooij, teammate Victoria von Braunmühl and Dominique Van Dalsen know the target they have to try and beat. But similarly, any of those riders who can get in front of Rikke Maria Johansson of Denmark, 74.995, put themselves closer to a medal. Rikke Maria Johansson, as we've been mentioning, guaranteed top 5 now. Sophie Schmitz-Heinen, 4th is assured, and in a moment or two's time we'll know whether it is a guaranteed medal, but on 77, very, very likely to be one of our individual medalists and maybe European champion. So Sophie Van Rooij, who's been having a very good championship so far. Sophie helping the Dutch to their team silver medal with a 4th place finish in the team, 4th place finish in the individual. I would say, whilst pleased to support the team, pleased to be right in the mix, frustrating to be just off the podium yesterday. So Sophie Van Rooij and Juan Tango and try and lay down a freestyle program to take away an individual medal from these championships to go with her team silver. Again, you just get this sense of power, and again, I think from Sophie's point of view, there's no point in leaving anything on the table. You know, denied the medal yesterday, the only way to get a medal today is to ride 105% at any movement you try and do. Of course, you know, that's easy to say if we're working with simple sports equipment. We're working with horses. You have to ride the horse you're on the day, and that sometimes is what keeps people, you know, not able to deliver and push the throttles perhaps as much as they would like. But Sophie, I think, has got Huantango here right on side today and is doing her level best. Change into the counter-canter, holding that balance, changing back again. That's a nice high technicality movement. Change, a little bit hesitant in that change. Same with the flying changes, having the double coefficient. If you're going to repeat them, a good score, of course, helps your average up. A bad score helps your average down. A very, very fine line to be trodden in repeating movements in a freestyle, especially ones as important as the trot half pass and the flying changes are in this test. Sophie just needs a little bit of last day championship boost, because if she doesn't break into the 74s, remember we've got 4 horse and rider pairs on some form of 74%. So if you don't score a 75 because Rikke Maria is on 74.995, you could very easily, instead of being second, be 6th. So again, a little bit early on her music for Sophie Van Rooij and Huantango there at the end of the freestyle program. It's a very, very consistent week. 4th for her team in the team test, 4th yesterday in the individual test. But hoping that today she can just go one better and maybe take a medal. Whatever happens in a moment, we will have one confirmed medalist. Most likely, Sophie Schmitz-Heinen and Attractive on their score of 77.530. Wait and see, but I'm just not sure that Sophie Van Rooij is going to get such a big new personal best that she's going to overtake all of those riders on 74%, right up to the 74.995 scored by Rikke Maria Johansson. It's a great score, and it is exactly where she needed to be, 75.345. That is the moment to get a personal best. Sophie Van Rooij and Juan Tango, 75.345, goes second at the moment. It means that Sophie Schmitz-Heinen is now confirmed as a medalist from these championships. We just have to wait and confirm the colour. And here is the final German rider. Germany, Netherlands is the match now with the last two horse and rider pairs. So DSP First Class and Victoria von Braunmühl gave the Germans a super start. They were the very, very first horse and rider pair down the center line in the team test here on Wednesday morning. First Class ended up 7th in the team test ranking, 5th in the individual test ranking. .8 is their PB, their personal best at Freestyle, and today's the day to try and replicate that. Again, that 76%, very, very interestingly, comes from the CBI at Hagen in June. And it is the only freestyle that this pair have ridden together. Hagen was their only international show together before coming to these championships. Really nice extended walk. Of course, we're sitting at a great place for a lengthening of the horse's frame in any pace just across the diagonal. Not the most difficult transition, direct walk to counter transition, but by the same token, when that's what you choose to ride, you do have to be direct. You open yourself there to the opportunity of maybe just being a little bit too progressive through the transition. Victoria rides it well. Anticipation of that change, and again, changes are not an area where you can afford to have a chink in your armour, the way this freestyle is scored for the juniors. Giving us a few more changes as they build up towards their final halt. The challenge done, the challenge for all of the German riders done. Victoria von Braunmühl and DSP First Class might not have expected on day one that they would be riding in this freestyle. There's a limit of 3 riders per nation, and even coming 7th in the team, Victoria was the discard for the German team. But their third rider who contributed to the team goal just did not have the best day at all in the individual test. So Victoria then qualified for the freestyle. So I think whatever happens, simply being in here is beyond expectation for the beginning of the week. Already a team gold to her credit. 7th in the team test. And as I said, I think they could have been top 5 if they hadn't been the very, very first horse and rider in the ring. 5th then, which I think is more representative in the individual test of this pair's performance. And now, can they post a score to, 1, remain inside the top 5? Because remember, those 74%, they are right there, and there's a huge group of them, 4 of them. You could drop 4 places very, very quick by just a fraction of a point. Or could Victoria, going the other way, and looking at this positively, could she snatch a medal here?
77 530, c'est la position, la deuxième place,
My goodness, look at this, 76 305. Victoria von Braunmühl has not only held her position inside the top 5, she has guaranteed herself a medal. She will be a medalist at these championships, silver at the moment. The lowest she could finish is bronze. Victoria von Braunmühl and DSP First Class making this whole week really matter from very, very first down the centre line on Wednesday morning now, with the expectation at the time, probably, given the team structure and orders, that they were going to be the lowest German score, which is still always going to be a very good score, and maybe not get to ride the freestyle. She does get to ride in the freestyle, and my goodness did she capitalise on it.
technical 72.85, artistical 79.76, 76.305, second rank so far. Deuxième place pour Victoria Braunmühl.
So that puts Sophie Van Rooij and Juan Tango down into bronze for the moment. And the partnership that have been fourth in every test this week might, and we'll find out in a moment whether they're going to be fourth again, because here comes the final horse and rider pair. Once again in the orange tailcoat of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, it is Dominique Van Dalsen and Just Johnson. Dominique and Just Johnson, third in the team test, bronze in the individual test. And now riding to try and make a clean sweep of medals. Team silver on day one, individual medal yesterday. Could it be individual freestyle medal today? The targets to get on the podium at all, more than 75,345. To take silver, more than 76,305. To take the title, more than 77.5 is what is required.
Last rider to go in this freestyle test.
So 75.5, their best, scored at Exlu in the Netherlands in June of this year. And they need that and maybe a little bit more. Dominique Van Dalsen, Just Johnson, the last contender in the junior individual freestyle. A returning championship rider. They were at the juniors last year. They did not on that occasion progress through to the freestyle. They were part of the Dutch team medal performance that week as well. Very, very attractive picture overall. This is a strong freestyle. Whether it's quite enough to overtake our top two on the table. And not forgetting Dominique has breathing down her neck. Teammate Sophie Van Rooij as well. probably one of the best walk pirouettes we've seen in the whole championships. Again, taking a lot of the positive boxes on the extended walk as well. Yeah, it's nice to see, you know, the mirror image of an exercise like that quite quickly for the judges. I think it also helps them, you know, keep a tally of their technical marking quite easily. So Dominique Van Dalsen completes the 5 days of the FEI Dressage European Championships for juniors and this individual freestyle division in its own right. Dominique already a medalist, a team medalist for the Netherlands, an individual medalist in the individual technical test, and now we wait and see whether it is going to be a freestyle medal as well. Two medalists confirmed. Sophie Schmitz-Heinen, an attractive, and Victoria von Braunmühl, DSP first class for Germany. Sophie and attractive, hoping that they might make it double gold. Well, it will be triple gold, having been team gold as well. Victoria von Braunmühl, part of the team gold, and going to take her first individual medal of the week. And for sure, we're going to have a Dutch individual medalist. The question is whether it will be Sophie Van Rooij, who has been individually fourth in the team test, individually fourth in the technical test. Is it Sophie or Dominique Van Dalsen who gets the nod for the individual medal? It's Dominique. Dominique Van Dalsen and Just Johnson score 77.325. They are 0.25%, a quarter of 1% behind Juni Sophie Schmitz-Heinen for silver. Victoria von Braunmühl and DSP first class will take the bronze, and unfortunately Sophie Van Rooij can only reflect on the fact that she is the most consistent contender of the championships, with fourth place in the team, fourth place in the individual, and now heartbreakingly, I suppose, for her, fourth place in the individual. Rounding out the top five then is Rikke Maria Johansson and Bauna Huyens Carpaccio, up from seventh in the individual to take top five with us here today on 74.995. So at the conclusion of the championships, congratulations to Germany, the Netherlands and Great Britain, our team medalists, gold, silver and bronze. To Juni Sophie Schmitz-Heinen and attractive, Theresa Paul and Dominique Van Dalsen and Just Johnson, our gold, silver and bronze medalists in the individual. And today in the freestyle, Juni Sophie Schmitz-Heinen and attractive makes it a third gold medal of the week for her, with victory here in the freestyle. Dominique Van Dalsen and Just Johnson will add an individual silver to yesterday's individual bronze and team silver, and Victoria von Braunmühl and DSP first class reward for being first down the centre line of the whole week with an individual bronze here today in the freestyle. Plenty of new personal bests, but as you said, in many cases, that is because these quite young horses are in their first international season with these talented under-18 riders. Sophie Van Rooij, 4th over the whole week. Rikke Maria Johansson there taking 5th. Clara Cordes-Anker, we're mentioning her, up from 13th in the individual to eventual 6th. Brit Kikstra-Van der Linden, Soullie scoring that 74% as well. But look at that, 74 holding 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th, and 73.5 for Theresa Paul and Dieton, who'd been individual silver medalists yesterday. Unfortunately, it is 9th for them today. Much further down than I think they would have imagined. And again, paying that little bit of penalty, because if you couldn't get in front of the 74s and ended up behind them, you suddenly dropped a lot of places. Just to round it out, Abigail Gray and Empire B 10th on 72.590. So that concludes the sporting action from the FEI Dressage European Championships for juniors this week. But don't forget, there is still more from Le Mans this weekend, because we're bringing together the Dressage European Championships for children on horses, juniors and for pony riders, the eventing championships for the pony riders, and the jumping championships for the pony riders. The children's individual final is currently on in the white arena. The pony eventing, show jumping and team is complete, so the next up in the jumping then is going to be the pony individual final, and that indeed has just gotten underway. So the final day of the FEI Dressage European Championships for children, juniors and pony riders, alongside the FEI Eventing European Championships for ponies and the FEI Jumping European Championships for ponies, coming into its final day here at Le Mans. Thank you for joining us over the course of the juniors, and our congratulations to all of our medalists. And of course, they will be going to the podium area later on to receive their individual medals, and their congratulations richly deserved for a fantastic week of sport with us here in Le Mans. Plenty more youth sport coming across the year on Clip My Horse, not least coming up the FEI Nations Cup finals, the Youth Nations Cup finals, when those teams that have been going so well throughout the CSIO Youth Series, and of course these youth championships over the last few weeks at like Riesenbeck for the children, juniors and young riders, and here in Le Mans for the ponies. They will be going to those youth championships, and quite often bringing over the best of the US as well for those championships. The North American Youth Championships currently underway in Traverse City, Michigan as well, and they will be going into their final day a little bit later on. Traverse City in Michigan, 6 hours behind the UK, 7 hours behind Europe. Do check out the program listings on Clip My Horse for all the details of the final day of those youth championships as well. But from the junior arena, Piste Jean here in Le Mans, it's bye-bye for now.